Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, bonus time is here. That's right, you're listening to the Kill by Kill podcast. Greetings and salutations, Internet. Welcome to the Kill by Kill podcast. My name is Patrick Hamilton. I am a supposed entertainment professional, only because I don't get paid to do anything else. And I get to talk to one of my favorite people in this entire world, at least on the internet, Gina Radcliffe. How you doing, Gina?
Well, I am not an entertainment professional. I am an entertainment amateur, but other than that, I'm doing well. I'm excited for this episode. I've been doing a lot of research. I have a little page of notes here. I'm ready. I'm prepared.
A little page of notes. Buckle up, campers. So we are filled to the brim with research. If by filled to the brim, we mean a little, quote-unquote, page of notes from Gina, I will be relying on my faulty memory as we take this time in between our regularly scheduled podcasts to delve into the wild and woolly world of 3D movies in the 80s. And I suppose where we should start is the very beginning. It's a very good place to start if I learned anything from Broadway's musicals. And we should talk about why 3D came back in the 80s.
It was basically to kind of deal with the issue of people not going out to the movies as much as they used to because of cable and the VHS boom. So much like in the 50s when they tried a lot of gimmicks such as 3D or with the William Castle movies like House on Haunted Hill, an actual model skeleton flying out over the audience, or if you ever heard of the movie The Tingler, the gimmick for that was mild electrical shocks in the theater seats. Because the idea of the Tingler was that was a creature that would attach itself. I can't remember if it was the base of your skull or the base of your spine. And
I think it was the base of the spine to
essentially just vibrate you to death, and you know to make let the audience get in on that horrifying sensation of getting a light massage. They had little electrically wired seats in some theaters.
Well, in the 50s, the idea of getting a light massage was so frightening to so many white people that it literally would just chill them to the bone. I think the hook, if I remember correctly, about the Tingler, and I'm recalling when I saw it on Elvira, Mistress of the Dark here locally on Channel 9, was that it fed on your fear. But if you vocalized, if you screamed, it would unattach itself. And the whole basis of this was to get audience members to scream, hence elevating the sort of audience experience of watching The Tingler.
So sort of like an adult version of clapping, so Tinkerbell comes back to life in Peter Pan then?
Exactly, only more crass and craven. And you said, Gina, we've got cable and we've got VHS, which are just soaking up all the available oxygen in terms of people's time for entertainment. And so Hollywood, being the creature that it is, which is always learning the wrong lessons, it reached back into its very tired bag of tricks and came up with 3D. 3D is not something you can do at home, even though people have tried to do 3D at home many, many times. Again, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark did it, I believe, for one of the Creature of the Black Lagoon sequels. And so you bring people in and you have to make that product. There is no 3D conversion at this moment in time. So you have to make 3D movies. And what is our first 3D movie to talk about tonight?
I did arrange them chronologically because the 3D boom only lasted about a year and a half, from March 82 to November of 83.
Okay.
The first of these was a movie called Parasite. Now I want to take a moment to point out to our listeners that Patrick and I in internet years, we're like nursing home age. We're ancient. So this is not something that I just kind of looked up on the internet. I actually saw all of these movies. Well, okay, one I didn't, but I've seen all of these movies at some point when I was young. A couple of them in the theater. Among them, Parasite.
So,
now,
were you taken to Parasite by a parent? Or was this a drive-in situation? How did this happen?
Parasite, my mom loved horror movies, and I mentioned this, I think I mentioned this in our opening episode. I had those kind of super liberal 70s parents who really did not monitor what I watched at all. Mm-hmm. I mean, to a point where they probably should have at some point. I mean, once I became a parent myself, I'm like, oh my God, why didn't anybody ever tell me no? Because I should not have watched a lot of these movies. I mean, yeah, I saw Halloween in the theater and I was 6 or thereabouts. I saw Jaws. I was even younger. I don't want to say they scarred me for life, but they definitely had an effect, let's say, that probably, school psychologists and teachers wouldn't have found to be a positive one. But I digress. That's for if I ever get a spot on the mental illness happy hour.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. But yeah, Parasite, that was actually the first of these movies. A lot of people would assume it's Friday the 13th. It is not. That just happened to be the most successful of them. It was directed by Charles Band, the founder of Full Moon Features, which is the production company responsible for such masterpieces as the Puppet Master series, Tracers, Mandroid, Evil Bong,
your demonic toys, your robot joxes,
your Ginger Dead Man versus Evil Bong, which is the current series that's out now. I don't recommend it. I mean, even if you're a connoisseur of bad movies, it's kind of the Sharknado brand of bad movies, where it's very self-aware of how shitty it is, and that's, as opposed to, say, like Fateful Findings or Birdemic, which was, someone who thought that they were an artiste, putting out their master project. This is just garbage and self-aware garbage. Anyway, Parasite, I remember seeing this movie. I remember exactly one scene in it, and I was looking over the plot description on Wikipedia, and I do not remember any of what is described as happening in this movie. I mean, the only reason I remember that it was the first big starring role for Demi Moore is probably reading it somewhere later and saying, oh yeah, I saw that movie. I don't remember her in it, but I've seen that movie. Have you seen Parasite?
I have seen it somewhere along the way. It doesn't make much of an impression. It's certainly of the vein of a great many Alien ripoffs, where it was this, it grows inside of you and eats its way out sort of monster movie.
Right, and that's the only scene I remember, and I'm assuming that it was probably intended to be the big 3D showpiece, like in Friday the 13th Part 3, when Rick's head is crushed and his eyeball flies at the camera. That's like the big showpiece, the part that everybody's going to remember, and just showing the miracle of 3D. And of course, it looks like garbage. In this, it was a woman's face in extreme close-up, and it just explodes, and the parasite comes flying out at the camera, undoubtedly to the shock and horror of everybody in the audience.
I believe when we discussed it previously, you described it as a burnt oven mitt with teeth. Yeah. And I think that's very accurate for what it is. It's not a miracle of design. This is as basic a creature. It's a slug with teeth that you can totally see someone is sticking their hand into it to make it move. And as delightful and engaging as that sounds when I say it out loud, it's even stupider when projected on a screen at 24 frames per second to give the illusion of movement. It just doesn't do anything. And it just seems like a very cheap cash grab, aiming to get the most bang for being the first to the 3D block.
Yeah, I mean, if you look over these list of movies, all of them are either sequels or just very blatant ripoffs of other better movies. Some of them are just absolutely shameless. The one I'm going to mention next. Actually, I'm going to skip over, obviously, Friday 13th Part 3, which came out the summer of 1982, because we will get to that later.
Oh, we will hear all about that. Just buckle your seatbelts for that, kids.
And then the following, in January 1983, was, as all the best movies come out in January, is a movie called Treasure of the Four Crowns. Mm-hmm. Now, I love the trailer for this. It looks like something. I mean, if you were to come up with just the cheesiest MST3K worthy trailer for an adventure movie, it looks like a parody of itself. And I think the funniest part of it is that at the beginning, it has the iron balls to compare it to, you've seen Aliens, you've seen Star Wars, you've seen Close Encounters, but now you've never seen anything like Treasure of the Four Crowns. Except you have, because it was a movie called Raiders of the Lost Ark.
You have seen something like it. And it's true, it is unique unto itself in that it is so poorly put together that it makes Friday the 13th Part 3 look like Godfather Part 2. It is nuts how poor that film comes across. I distinctly remember the snakes that would leap out of various pillars, because there's this odd Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones meets Ocean's 11 team that are all gathering to find these four elements of the crown. You put it all together and you summon some sort of serpent god or some bullshit. And what it comes down to is snakes on strings, poke at you, poke at you, poke at you, 3D effects. And the very end, this is on YouTube, so we'll try to tweet this out or at least put it on the Facebook page. The very end features one of the guys putting on the magical doohickey. Half of his face looks like undigested pizza. And then he shoots out sparks and flame balls, only they're not really flame balls. They're just bars. They're fire bars with like little holes in them so that the gas comes out on wires. And they're just swinging back and forth near stunt people wearing black turbans from head to toe. And it goes on and on and on. And the music is so triumphant. Oh my God. Can you believe those fire bars swinging on wires coming from this man's magical aura? Yeah, I can see the fucking wires. This is so stupid.
It's absurd. And I love the hubris, the absolute chutzpah in the trailer to try to say that this is something beyond Star Wars or Aliens. That this is just a motion picture experience that you've never had before.
And that is true. It's just not a good experience. It brings to mind, mentioning Charles Band once again, one of his features, Laser Blast, which, if you have not seen the Mystery Science Theater 3000 version, you can even watch it without. It's really entertaining bad. A lot of Eddie D's in action. And towards the very end, this teenager who has this stupid laser gun grafted onto his arm hitchhikes with some doofus in a pickup truck, and they pass a handmade Star Wars billboard. And he blows up the Star Wars billboard as to say, "Fuck you, Star Wars. There's a new king in town." Like, have you watched your movie? That takes a lot of balls. And yet, it is that sort of hubris that makes this elevated in terms of a really bad movie, a good bad movie that you can enjoy. Whereas, Parasite's a slog. I think Four Crowns, because it's half an Italian and half in English, and neither half knows what the other is saying. And I'm sure the crew was 4 different ways from Sunday.
And I think that they described like the 3D as like super view or something like that. So they were even trying to claim that it was, you know, a different, better type of 3D too, which no, it really wasn't.
As someone who sat in the theater watching it in Glendale, California on Brand Boulevard, this is how memorable this experience was. The same theater I saw The Fly in, the same theater that I saw Ghostbusters in. It was shit-tacular. And I remember laughing at certain points in it. Okay, what's next up to bat?
Next is May 1983's Space Hunter: Adventure in the Forbidden Zone. This is another one that I remember seeing. I don't think I saw it in the theater. I probably caught it on cable. But again, in preparing for this episode, I was reading the plot synopsis on Wikipedia, and I'm like, what? That really happened? I mean, it's way more elaborate than any B-grade sci-fi motion picture needs to be. Have you seen it?
I know there was one 3D movie that's post-apocalypse that has Bull from Night Court in it.
Yeah, that's Metal Storm. We'll get to that.
So this is the one that has a pre-16 Candles Molly Ringwald and some sort of junkyard maze.
That's the only thing. Molly Ringwald is the only part I can remember about it. I mean, it involves a plague and androids and mermaids and dragons. And Michael Ironside is there with metal claw hands. How do I not remember a movie with Michael Ironside with metal claw hands? How does that not just reserve a spot in my brain forever? And then I think the most hilarious part is Ernie Hudson is in it. And even though the movie takes place, I think in like the 22nd century, he's still playing a character named Washington because you know, he's black. So of course they're always named Washington.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. I mean, and despite all of that, all I can remember is that Molly Ringwald was in it. That is it. And I'm realizing I keep mixing it up with another movie, not Metal Storm, but I don't even remember the name of this movie. It had Barry Bostwick in it.
Oh, are you talking about Megaforce?
I am talking about Megaforce. That is it. Oh my
god! How can you confuse this with Megaforce?
Megaforce. I mean, they all sound alike.
That's true. In terms of the way it sounds, they 100% can be conflated with one another.
And it absolutely came out the same time.
But in terms of cinematic experience, Megaforce is unto itself. We're talking about the very same director who brought the Cannonball Run movies to life. Now has his hands on the wheel of a giant franchise about a ragtag group of mercenaries who have flying motorcycles that only fly at the very end of the movie in the worst version of blue screen you've ever seen in your entire life.
Now, see, I'm looking
Persis
at
Kambata is in it.
Yeah, and I'm like, Persis Kambata. I'm like, am I sure I'm not looking at the page for Warrior of the Lost World? Because
it's all the same movie.
I was going to say, these are all the same movie.
They're all filmed in the same Italian or Spanish desert wasteland. And Megaforce is 6 ways from Sunday stupid.
They all have, you know, bearded gentlemen in the lead role. You know, is mostly lacking the charisma that is required for leading men in action movies, except for Barry Bostwick, who because he comes up so often on stuff on my blog that he has a special place in my heart.
Yeah. Well, he has a twinkle in his eye, and when he's in the right role, he absolutely sings. And if you're looking for something that has that je ne sais quoi of homoerotic militarism that's in Top Gun, oh, do I have a supercon of Megaforce for you?
Now, see, how is that not in 3D?
Because it ran over budget, and it cost millions and millions of dollars to wreck a bunch of cars. I think it was just outside of the run of that because, again, outside of Friday the 13th 3D, not many of these movies made enough money where everyone else is like, I gotta hop on that money train. This was more like exploitation studios saying, how can we milk this for a little extra edge?
It does heighten the experience, whereas, you're not sitting there thinking, okay, oh, he's got a cigarette. I bet he's going to find a way to stick the cigarette in the camera. Oh, here comes a cigarette. Oh boy.
Yeah, I think the go-to maneuver for a lot of these movies was fireballs.
Yeah.
There were a lot of fireballs coming in.
Yeah, things on fire were always, like, Friday the 13th, you've got a flaming poker, and it sort of reminds me, you've seen Waiting for Guffman, right?
Yes.
When he's talking about, I think he was in a musical version of Fahrenheit 451, and he said that the audience didn't like having fire, he said they didn't like having fire poked at them. You can't poke people in the face with fire.
That very quickly brings to mind one of our jobs was coming up with a special shoot for a TV show that was being ported over from England called Stacked. This version happened to star Pamela Anderson. And we came up with a special shoot for it to sort of get people excited. It was going to air during NFL games. And it was, one part was her reading to what you think is a group of little boys, and it turns out to be grown men just staring at her boobs. And I'm very proud. And the other was her walking in slow motion and everyone gawking at her because it was so out of place. And she hired one of her favorite fashion photographers to actually shoot it. And he smoked the entire set. So we come on to set and you have this bookstore that is just shrouded in mist. Like they're filming The Fog inside of there. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, it's atmosphere. The atmosphere is Fahrenheit 451. You got a bunch of smoky books. This is stupid. Later on, Pamela Anderson stuck her boobs in my wife's face and demanded, like, I think this is gonna look cheesy, and I don't want to look cheesy. And later, she came over and said, why didn't you say anything? And I don't know about you, but the idea of Pamela Anderson sticking her boobs in my wife's face was so jaw-dropping a concept that to actually see it play out, I was at a loss for words. I'm sorry. And I've been apologizing ever since.
For all your hard work, I believe I watched an episode of that on a plane once.
You know what? It got what it deserved, to be honest with you. I believe they fired one of the lead actors from that show during that shoot, but shot him anyways. And then at the end of it, they're like, this sucks. We're never going to use it. Hey, guess where I saw it again? The opening credits of the fucking show. They hated it so much, it was the opening statement of every episode that aired, all 2 seasons. Okay. Enough about me and my entertainment problems. Let's move on to other people's entertainment problems. What's our next 3D catastrophe to discuss?
Probably the only other one besides Friday the 13th that most people have seen, and that is July 1983's Jaws 3D.
Oh, yes.
Now, Patrick, I understand that your mother has an unreasonable dislike for the rather harmless and benign Bess Armstrong. You want to talk about that?
She does. And I almost wish she was here to talk about it because it's one of the craziest. I'd never seen my mother aim her sarcasm at show business very much growing up. It was always, back talking people who were PTA members or someone at church. This was very deliberately aimed at Bess Armstrong, whom she hated with the brightness of 1,000 suns. And watching it again recently, I'm almost on her side. Every time she kisses Dennis Quaid, she does so like this. Hi, honey. Every fucking time. Like she's greeted him like they haven't been apart. And she's so every time. There's no sexual chemistry between these two very attractive people who are constantly trying to touch one another. They're attempting to have a thin man sort of rapport with one another, and it does not work.
Keeping with the other 2 movies that, I guess for lack of a better phrase, sort of end on a high note where, the survivors are sort of paddling back to the shore after defeating the shark. I just like that, even though the park that is their livelihood is probably going to be shut down, and a bunch of people were brutally killed right before their very eyes. Like Bess Armstrong still lets out the fist pumping. All right, at the end of the movie,
the dolphins are okay. That's the thing. The dolphins live. And that's all she cares about.
I mean, fuck poor Simon McCorkindale, fuck the guy that was working in the booth with Louis Gossett Jr. and the other woman. At least at least Sandy and Cindy are okay.
Oh, those fucking dolphins! There's so much goddamn trouble. They recently re-released Jaws 3 on Blu-ray, and you have to turn it to the very back to see that it includes the 3D version, converted for 3D, TVs. And so I'm like, well, I have to watch it now. So I did. And it was a chore, to say the least, to get through what is one of the ugliest films I've ever seen. Occasionally you'll have this magic hour sort of shot of the guy who's trying to weld the fence together. You're like, well, that looks like a good looking movie. Why can't we watch that one? And nope. It also has one of the worst 3D gags I've ever seen executed. Dennis,
the arm or the fish head just floating.
Well, the fish head's bad, but at least the fish head, you're like, it goes on too long. But the skeleton arm, Bess and Dennis are down there trying to determine where this shark might be, and they go down in a submarine, and the camera just turns to this prop skeleton with his arm extended, and then you hear dubbed in voiceover Bess Armstrong go, okay. And then Dennis is like, oh, no, we call him Jimmy or some bullshit. It's like, this isn't even a fucking jump scare. It is.
Yeah, it's also a movie that they attempt to marry 3D with slow motion, and it does not. Well, I should say it works to hilarious results, because you've got that. I would say it's reasonable to call it iconic now shot of the shark slowly floating towards the control booth. And I didn't realize until many years later, oh, it's supposed to be in slow motion. Okay, it's not because, they just kind of put this model shark and they couldn't move it too fast. It's like,
part of what helps slow motion come across is movement. Now, when it cuts to the group who are inside the control room, they're moving in sort of that blip, blip, blip sort of slow motion. But when it cuts back to the shark, it just looks like a kid's toy on a stick. With no flippers move, the mouth doesn't move.
Yeah, it's got this little face on it, and it's also the film quality is different. Like as you say, the shots inside the booth, they look like 80s era slow motion. It's a little grainy, it's choppy, and then this one is just like clear as a bell. He's in the water, floating very slowly.
Yeah, it's just a composite shot, and it just doesn't work. Like, Billy the singing bass is more lifelike than this fucking shark. And
then somehow it has gathered up enough steam and power to just headbutt its way into this glass control booth,
which they say earlier on in the movie is like 6 feet thick. This fucking glass. It makes no goddamn sense whatsoever. And then they have the gall to kill Simon McCorkindale
with a really unnecessarily brutal death. And I feel like that. I think that the idea they had in mind was to kind of outdo Jaws in a lot of ways. So yeah, I mean,
mission accomplished.
Yeah. Quint's death was pretty brutal. It's sort of also, they're starting to get into the idea that was really just taken and run down the football field on Jaws the Revenge, that the shark kind of is a little smarter than sharks actually are. So he's torturing him, essentially. I mean, he is slowly crushing him to death. And
everyone is paying for some sort of previous sin. The Brody boys are paying for, being the spawn of a certified shark killer from Amity Island. McCorkindale is paying for the sin of blowing up other sharks with grenades. And so his severed arm clutching a grenade is what saves the day in the end. If his undigested arm clutching a grenade isn't there, when the shark busts through an impossibly thick glass wall, well, SeaWorld would still be run by that shark to this very day.
It's not even his arm. It's like the shark didn't finish swallowing him. It's like, how do you function with, I'm pretty sure sharks are no more able to function with food trapped halfway down their throats than humans are. But he's just like, yeah, I'm gonna leave that as a little snack for later. I mean, he's not a chipmunk. They don't store their food in their cheek pockets. It's memorable in just for the absurdity of the framing shot at the end with the shark's teeth, which somehow remain intact, even though there's not so much of an inch of flesh left of the rest of his body, but somehow his jaws remain intact, and that was supposed to be a really cool shot. It's like, oh, come on, really? Come on now.
Yeah, it is piss poor. I was hoping for a good bad sort of time, and it was a real difficult watch. Scenes would begin and end without any sort of determination or point. They would just, well, we ran out of film in the magazine. I guess we should stop filming this scene. There's just no point to any of it, and it just goes on and on and on. And the shark attack scenes don't work. The non-shark attack scenes really don't work. The dolphins make you hate dolphins, and that is hard to do.
Who hates dolphins? I do.
After watching Jaws 3D, I did for a little while. Like, they don't come off well, and they're supposed to be the heroes in this fucking thing. Like, the amount of people who have done better: Dennis Quaid, Bess Armstrong, Leah Thompson, Louis Gossett Jr., Simon McCorkindale's weird Australian man who is just always at his flank with a mustache, treating everyone else like shit.
Maybe his boyfriend, possibly. I mean,
maybe
he seems a little devastated when he's killed. So,
well, that's his ticket.
Well, that's true. That's true.
It's fucking deplorable. And to add insult to injury, what we could have had was Jaws 3 People Zero. John Hughes wrote it.
Oh, God.
And Maddie Simmons from National Lampoon also took a swing at it. And then it was going to be directed by Joe Dante.
Oh my God! So it could have been like almost like a Gremlins type of thing then.
That Gremlins was what he ended up doing because that fell through. So in one standpoint, I'm glad we got Gremlins, but on the other, I would murder to see this movie with these people at the height of their powers to do this at that moment in time, and we're never going to get it back.
But hey, there's always Jaws the Revenge.
Oh my God. Where a housewife goes to an island to get over the death of her husband by having sex with maybe not a coke runner. Hoagie kind of comes off like he's running drugs.
I get that. I get that impression. Next, in August 1983, the only one of these I have never seen. I'm not sure if anybody has ever seen it. It is The Man Who Wasn't There. It was the only one of these, notable as being the only one of these movies in the 3D craze that was neither a horror movie or or a sci-fi movie. It was basically your standard Invisible Man comedy starring Steve Guttenberg.
Oh no!
Yes, that's the Steve Guttenberg, pre-Police Academy, I believe, post Diner.
Wait a second, so Jeffrey Tambor is in this?
Jeffrey Tambor took a long time to find his career. He was in a lot of garbage, but the one thing I do so enjoy about The Man Who Wasn't There is the tagline on the poster, and this took an incredible amount of thought from the publicity department. It was, being invisible gets you into spy rings, diplomatic circles, and the girls' locker room. Wah, wah.
Sexual assault is fun.
Yeah, I was going to say, this was the Porky's era, when, horny young dudes committing misdemeanors by secretly peeping at naked young women was the height of comedy. But I had to ask, Steve Guttenberg would have been in his mid-20s at this point. What girls' locker room is he sneaking into?
A professional girls' locker room.
A professional girls' locker room.
Whatever the precursor to the WNBA was, he was sneaking into there.
I mean, I'll be charitable and say maybe college. I don't know if colleges, I guess they have communal shower rooms. I don't know. I did not go away for college. But yeah, I do so enjoy what would you do if you were invisible? Yeah, you're a pervert. We know. Yeah, I've never seen this movie. I don't know anybody who's seen it. It seems unremarkable in every possible way.
Yeah, apparently, I guess this was like Miguel Ferrer's first movie. It was William Forsythe's first movie. Lisa Langlois is in this. Michael Ensign. And I guess it was produced by Frank Mancuso Jr., who was the man behind the Friday the 13th series, in particular, taking the executive producer reins for Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D. So this must have been...
raking in that sweet 3D money.
Yeah, he must have made some sort of deal with the devil, with whoever was providing the 3D technology. And they're like, all right, we'll make 2 movies. We'll do this Friday the 13th one, and we'll make another one, an Invisible Man one. That way shoes and underwear can fly out at the audience. That poster is horrific, and it has 2 taglines. The second is the funniest thing you've never seen, which I'm almost okay with. That should have been the top one.
That's accurate, because I've never seen it.
Yeah.
Following that, also in August 1983, a banner month and year for shitty movies, is Metal Storm, The Destruction of Jared Sin. This is another Charles Band joint. A pretty blatant ripoff of The Road Warrior. Pretty much notable only as a starring role for Richard Mull. Who, as per Wikipedia, liked the look of he shaved his head for the role and liked it so much that he kept it when he auditioned to play Bull on Night Court, one of the greatest TV shows of all time, and obviously a huge upgrade from Metal Storm, The Destruction of Jared Sin. Because yeah, when you have when you star in a movie with that title, your career only goes way up or way down. There is no parallel to starring in a movie called Metal Storm.
No one can maintain that level of quality for very long.
No.
Either you move along or everyone else does. Yeah.
Yeah, I got all you're missing is a little kid, running around and, growling like a Wolverine. That's all you're missing from this movie. So, that being said, we move on to the coffin. I'm mixing my metaphors. The nail in the coffin of the 80s 3D boom. November 1983's Amityville 3D.
Oh my god. Until you said this right now, I had forgotten its existence.
I have seen this movie more times than I am comfortable saying. Not because it was good or anything, just because it was constantly on cable in the mid-'80s. It was every other day some channel was running Amityville 3D. It must have cost them $20 and a carton of Newports to get the rights to run this on HBO and Cinemax. The the only notable thing that could be said about this movie is it is the film debut of Meg Ryan. They were playing around because they could not mention the Lutzes because George Lutz, wanting to ride that money train all by himself, was starting to sue anybody that tried to capitalize on the name. And this has got a surprisingly quality cast for such a piece of shit.
I mean, this is
got Tony Roberts,
Tess Harper.
Yeah,
Candy Clark.
Probably my favorite aspect of it is that instead of where in the first movie they had the big, basically open hole full of black slime that George Lutz falls into while he's trying to escape from the house, which is pretty effective. In this one, it looks like a haunted jacuzzi. It's like basically it's a jacuzzi. It really is. It's
bubbling.
Yeah, it's a bubbling clear pool that things just rise out of.
I mean, if you're going to watch one sequence, don't make it the elevator sequence of Candy Clark. Make it the scene right at the very end where the scientist who's monitoring this crazy haunting gets right up close to that Satan's jacuzzi. And a demon pops out of it. And again, fireball out of his mouth. Melts half this guy's face. A la the Crazy Four Crowns movie. And then he gets one wide eye, screams, and then the demon drags him in the jacuzzi for a soak or something.
And he does the whole get out of here, save yourself, while he's being dragged into the jacuzzi. It's hilarious. It was following up Amityville 2, which is fucking crazy. Yes. I very much hope we get to that for an episode or two because there is a lot to unpack with Amityville 2. I mean, it's these kind of things work a little better when the family seems kind of normal. Poltergeist is a really nice family, and it's kind of awful to see these things happen to them. But no, I mean, the family in Amityville 2, I mean, the dad's smacking, Burt Young smacking the kids around from, the minute they get in the house, and, the brothers eyeing the sister like she's a platter full of chicken fried steak, and he's going in her room, telling her to take her shirt off. Yeah, she's totally cool with that. And it's like, again, this is like the first night they're in the house. These things are happening.
Really, really gross. She has a doll in that, and I freeze framed it the night I was watching it on MGM HD, and it's in leather bondage gear, and it's just in the background. I just every part of it is sleazy as fuck. It's just gross. And then the second half of it becomes this legal thriller about how to unpossess this murderer who shot up his family and his sister who he was sleeping with, and then kind of brushes off and gives her the cold shoulder. And I don't know who to feel worse for. It's all gross as fuck. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So I think with Amityville 3, they were we have to tone this down a little bit, and they toned it down to the point where it was pretty much almost TV movie quality, and as far as like the quote unquote scare factor and the special effects, and it's almost charming in how goofy and cheesy it is. And I almost want to like it, but I'm not quite there yet.
No, I think it has its moments. It's just the whole doesn't quite work as much as the highs are really high, but the lows are so fucking low. Okay, well, this is great because now after this episode, next week we are starting up with Friday the 13th Part 3D, and we're going to get into every single detail about it. In our first episode, tell your friends, tell your enemies, because the first two characters we meet in this fucking movie, you have to see to believe. I promise you, it is worth the watch. All right, Gina, where can people find you on the internet?
I write about 70s and 80s television at tuneintonight.wordpress.com.
Excellent. Wonderful. Hey, do you want to talk to us about something? You can on Twitter at KillByKillPod. And our email is killbykillpod@gmail.com. Please reach out to us and tell us what you think. Did we miss a 3D movie that you want us to talk about, or some sort of element about 3D that you have an insight on? Let us know. All right, that has been Kill by Kill. We'll be back to our regular schedule, character assassination, starting next week. And for Gina and myself, bye-bye.
Bye.
Kill by Kill is produced by We Write Good and is intended for entertainment purposes only. Friday the 13th is owned by Paramount Pictures. Jason is owned by New Line Cinema. No infringement is intended. Kill by Kill logo was designed by Josh Hollis. Visit him at joshhollis.com. The Kill by Kill theme was created exclusively for us by Revenge Body. Get the whole track and much, much more at revengebodymemphis.bandcamp.com today.